Hey guys, I really missed seeing everybody. I can't believe we're heading into week 9 of school closure. It's kind of crazy to think about how long this has gone on. And as the time has gone on, I've realized how important our own mental health is because we are all spending so much time and energy taking care of our kids and taking care of parents. And for me, I think it's really important to make sure that we are also taking care of ourselves and taking care of each other because obviously, the saying goes, you can't pour from an empty cup. And these are incredibly stressful times. They're really challenging times. We are all being asked to do things that we weren't necessarily trained to do. And there's no end in sight. And what that does to our mental health, the impact is very real. So my hope is to be able to offer a series of these that maybe we can point you to some tips and strategies to help just sort of take care of ourselves through this crisis. I also hope that you guys will reach out when you have the opportunity to ask questions, or if there's things that you need that would be helpful, to be sure to ask. And I will try to point you to some resources if we can. So the way that I was kind of thinking about starting the conversation around mental health is to talk about the language of social and emotional learning, because that's a language that we're all really familiar with. So when we talk about social and emotional learning, it's a language that we use to talk to our kids about their mental health and their well-being. But how can we apply those strategies to ourselves? Because they're relevant for adults too. So the first thing to start with, I think a good starting point for the conversation about mental health through this crisis, is to talk about naming the feeling. So our first strategy would be naming the feeling. I think we tend to think about our emotions very broadly. We think somebody asks us how we're doing and we say, well, I'm fine, or I'm stressed, or I'm angry, I'm having a hard day. But we paint it in sort of these broad brushstrokes. And really our emotions are much more complicated than that, than those simple answers that we give ourselves or that we give other people. So when you think about naming the feeling, really ask yourself, what are all of the emotions that I'm feeling? And then what's the most predominant one in that? And then ask yourself even a little bit further, when did I first notice that that feeling was happening? When did I first notice that that started? And to go even deeper than that, to figure out what's the trigger behind it? What was it that started that feeling? What's happening in my life right now, or what's not happening in my life right now that may be contributing to that? So then the next step with that would be to recognize that emotions are information. That's all they are. So if you notice the feeling, if you can name the feeling, then not to judge it, not to tell the story about it. Because I find in lots of conversations that I'm having with people, they'll say, well, I'm really stressed today, but I shouldn't feel that way. Or I feel bad because I'm angry at my kids, or whatever. We judge the feeling that we're having. And really the goal of naming the emotion is just to notice that it's there and to notice it without judgment. It's not, when we know what we're feeling, we understand what we're feeling, it's then that we can work a little bit more on the why, and then hopefully to be able to figure out some strategies that we can use to cope with that emotion. So just to talk a little bit about a personal experience that I've been struggling with through this is extreme irritability. And anybody that has talked to me in the last couple of weeks, I've probably talked to you about this. But I noticed that even when people would ask me simple questions or perfectly reasonable things, that my reaction was to be very angry, really angry and really super irritable over little things. And so for me, walking through this process, the first step for me was to be able to name that and notice it, that it was happening. And I did feel really bad because oftentimes those questions were coming from volunteers or people who were giving their time to help with meal distribution or whatever. And I found myself being really irrationally angry with them. So I was feeling guilty about that too. And the more time I spent with that feeling and really trying to unpack what that was about, it really pointed me to a lot of these key things that are happening to all of us in this crisis. It's that I'm feeling incredibly overwhelmed. I'm feeling unprepared for the tasks that I have in front of me. I feel like I'm not managing them well. I feel some anxiety because I don't know when this is going to end. And I definitely feel angry because I didn't ask for any of this. This is not what I signed up for. And it helped to kind of understand better where that feeling was coming from, to sort of take it to that next level. But then the next step for me was, what's the strategy that I need to be able to come up with to deal with that extreme irritability? And it helped me to know that I needed to create better boundaries around my time. Part of that anger and resentment was coming around the issue that all of us have dealt with, which is there's no line between work and home anymore. That our work bleeds into all hours of the day, and texts from parents at 10 o'clock at night and very long work days. There's no bell that rings at the end of the day and we walk out the door 15 minutes later. It doesn't look that way. And so it made me really think about what are some ways that I can create some better boundaries for myself in this. So, I've done things like pick a time of day when I turn off my phone and ignore the email and ignore the text, because truthfully, most of those things can wait until the next day. There's very few of those things that roll in at weird hours that have to be dealt with in that moment. So creating better boundaries. And the other one was to really think about what kind of self-care I needed to do for myself. And I've started taking very long walks. And that's been very helpful when I can start to feel that kind of anger building up in me. I've created an outlet for myself in doing that. That's just one thing. There's a few other things that I have implemented too, but you kind of get the point that once I could identify that feeling, really think about where that was coming from, and then really create a different strategy for myself for how to deal with it so that it wasn't impacting me in an ongoing negative way. So that said, I apologize if you've been on the receiving end of that extreme irritability in the last couple weeks. I love you. It's not personal. It had nothing to do with you. I'm working on it. Anyway, so this is our mental health minute. I do also want to show you, I have put together a Padlet for everybody to look at with some articles and a couple videos and just some resources that I hope you guys will find helpful. I will make sure to post that in a place that people can find it, and we'll keep adding to it as I find additional things. And just kind of a final comment to everybody is that I know it doesn't feel like it all the time, but you guys really are doing great. You are doing miraculous things right now, and you're amazing. And even if it doesn't feel like it's perfect, even if it doesn't feel like what you would normally do, just know that you are doing your best and that is enough. So you guys are awesome. Take care of yourselves. Please stay in touch. Send an email, send a text. Let me know how you're doing, and let me know how I can help. But I miss you all, and we'll look forward to seeing you guys really soon. Take care.